Good evening. We've just called this meeting to order. You have, members, you have an agenda before you. Are any changes, any amendments required to the agenda? Are there any conflicts of interest that any of you have for items on the agenda?
Bluetooth. Do you know what this is?
Aaron, your mic is live. Don't know if you're intending to talk to us or not. Given no stated amendments or conflicts, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
I'll take the second moved as a second. So motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Lingua. Is there any discussion of the agenda? Are there any public comments on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia. Has Mejia arrived? Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. Next item on the agenda are public comments. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to legislative action. The legislative action item, a motion to adopt the December finance report subject to audit. Do we wish to have a presentation from staff on the finance reports first? Director Smith, is you're making some noises, but I couldn't actually hear speech.
Okay, are we here?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I think these were the reports from the last meeting that we mailed out.
Yes, and Ms. Barnes, do you have the Excel spreadsheet that you could put up on screen? It would be from the email that went out to the council.
Correct, Ryan, it's the budget comparison document, the last one on the screen currently.
You can make that a little bit bigger. So as indicated at the last meeting, we had journal entries that had to be made, and that was the cause for the delay. So when we can you move that? Well, actually, it's my, sorry, I have all the blocks with pictures in the way. So when we look at the year-to-date numbers, we have revenue of $6,055,657 and expenditures of 3.852. And when you compare that to previous years, and if it can be slid a little bit to the side so we can see the last column there, please. Thank you. So while our expenditures are up by under 400,000, about 380,000 year over year, our revenue is up by about a corresponding amount. We have also, at that point in time, had collected a very large percentage of our revenue for the entire year, because the budget's a $7.6 million budget. When you look at December in particular, so the center set of columns, we had revenue of 303,000. That was a significant increase over the the previous 2 fiscal years for that month, as well as the expenditures in December were slightly lower than last year and more than 2 years ago. So this again is subject to audit, but that is the report for December of fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Town Manager Liston. Is there council discussion or do we want a motion at this time?
I'm fine with the motion.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, motion to accept the finance report, subject to audit.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe to adopt the finance
Adopt.
report.
Thank
subject to audit. Thank you. Any discussion of the motion? Any public questions, comments, criticisms? Hearing no discussion, I will call the question. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia is in attendance at this time. Councilmember Mejia, thank you. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. Glad to see you, Councilmember Mejia. So that brings us to new business. Are there any items of new business for this special legislative meeting? Are there any items of unfinished business for this special legislative meeting? Hearing none, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, you both everybody came in at the same time. That was Councilmember Lingua who seconded, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Lingua to adjourn. This is not discussed or debated. I'll do an immediate roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua, excuse me, Councilmember,
Aye.
oh, Councilmember Lingua. Mess it up a little bit.
Aye.
Foe,
Aye.
thank you. Councilmember Siddiq,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. We are adjourned at 7:09 p.m. This brings us to our work session. Work session is a much less formal meeting. Don't generally call it to order, but okay, call to order at 7:09 p.m. The agenda is a guideline for our discussion. So are any changes needed to the agenda before we get into it? And as long as we're there, does anyone have any conflicts of interest for the items on the agenda this evening? We have a long agenda this evening, so I'm going to ask all council members to be mindful of the fact that we have a long agenda and try to keep your comments focused and pointed on the items under discussion. We have 3 presentations this evening. First presentation is on the Discovery District, lots 15 through 17, DSP revisions.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson. Can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mayor Thompson and staff and council for the opportunity to come and meet with you this evening. And by introduction, my name is Dean Lopez, and I'm Senior Vice President with Corporate Office Properties Trust. We are the joint venture developer with University of Maryland in the Discovery District East, as we call it, and we work with the university in developing office space within this district. And joining me this evening is Thomas Foz, Director of Development with Corporate Office Properties Trust. And I'll try to be very brief because I know you do have a long agenda and we don't have a lot of time. So this first slide is just to orient you as to the area that we're active in. And in particular, the area to the left that you see there outlined in yellow with the numbers 4 and 5. That is lots 15 through 17 that we're going to be discussing this evening. And the first building that we've developed there, which you see with the number 4, is 4600 River Road. And that's a 104,000 square foot office building that we completed within the last year and a half. And if you could please advance to the next slide. Here's a better view of the subject property with the 4600 River Road building in the foreground, and the rest of the lots 15 through 17 you see to the left and behind this building. Next slide, please. Here are two views of 4600 River Road. If you haven't been down River Road for a while and seen the completed building, you see Cybrary at the top of the building is the anchor tenant in the building. They occupy the entire 4th floor. The University of Maryland occupies the 3rd floor. And we have either leases in negotiation or prospects for the balance of this building. And so that being the case, we're effectively out of space to offer within the Discovery District. And even though, as you all probably know, it's a difficult office market generally right now, in the midst still of the pandemic, what we found within the Discovery District is that we always have to be at the ready for an opportunity. And the university has continued to push us to have product entitled and ready to go into construction so that we can seize on the opportunities when they arise. Next slide, please. Another view of 4600 River Road from the front along River Road. Next slide. And so this is the current certified detailed site plan for lots 15 through 17. And what you can see there is a demarcation line that shows the portion of these lots that are within Riverdale Park versus College Park. As you can see, most of the site is within College Park. The first building that you saw the photos of, 4600 Road, is in fact within Riverdale Park. And what this current entitlement includes is, in addition to the 104,000 square foot 4600 Road, which is 4 stories, it includes 2 additional 5-story buildings, each of 150,000 square feet. So 300,000 square feet with the existing building is a total of 404,000 square feet, which at that density would require a parking structure, which you see is the blue block at the rear of the site. Next slide, please. And so as time has passed since the entitlement and approval of that certified plan, we've rethought this site with the university and with changes in the market in mind. And we've come up with a new plan that we're very excited about, which is an opportunity to further densify the development here and give it more of an urban feel. And what it would involve in the near term would be reorienting those next 2 office buildings to be, rather than parallel to River Road, perpendicular to River Road. Still includes the same density, 2 buildings that would total 300,000 square feet and the parking garage. But what we're doing this in mind with is, in that large parking lot that you see towards the top of the plan, the ability to introduce through a future major amendment another office building of 150,000 square feet, which would bring the total density here to 550,000 square feet roughly. And if you could advance the slide, show you the vision of what that might look like. Thank you. And so here you see off to the right, you see the completed 4600 River Road building. To its left, the next building that we would contemplate building, we're calling that 4500 River Road, which is perpendicular to the road. And then the third building that you see there, also perpendicular road, Those would all be within the context of this revised DSP. And then again, we would come back in the future to add the density for the additional third or fourth office building actually in the rear. Now, what you're seeing between the two next buildings here is sort of a turnaround drive lane. That's not actually what we plan to build here. This is an older vision. What we're planning here is an urban park or plaza, if you will, a very activated area. And this was really kind of born out of COVID. And as you've probably seen with other newer buildings and projects, and maybe not surprisingly, there's more of an interest in indoor-outdoor types of workspaces. And so we would see this as being a very activated type of public-private area where interior amenity spaces spill into this area, could be used for outdoor meetings, could be used for outdoor concerts. We could see some pop-up food and beverage venues in this area. And if you could please move to the next slide. Here are some just aspirational visions of what that space could look and feel like from other projects. As you can see, it's a combination of hardscape and landscape. Next slide, please. And here you see some of the ideas that we have for ways that a space like that could be activated and type of look and feel of what we have in mind. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the next building would be 4500 River Road. In the interim, until we build a parking structure, we would contemplate this building also being surface parked as 4600 River Road was. We would like to find a way, and it's a funding issue that we have right now, to build that parking structure sooner rather than later. And that is an initiative that we have as an objective, and we've been in discussions with the county about and the university about finding ways that we could do that. And hopefully we would find that way in concurrently in conjunction with building this next building so that we wouldn't have to build all the surface parking. But this just shows you that what it could be in the interim. And the next slide, please. And so this is the last slide, and this is what that building would look like at the entrance into the development across the drive lane from 4600 River Road. And so what we're asking for the town's support of is we have shared this plan and this revisioning with Park and Planning for the past year or so. And they've been very receptive to it and very excited about it. And we submitted this formally as a revision to the DSP in early December, I should say late December. And in reviewing it, while they're still supportive of it, by virtue of the extent to which we're rotating and relocating these next two buildings, there technically would be a need for this to be reviewed as a major DSP revision. Because we're not changing the site entrances, we're not changing the density, we're only changing the orientation of these buildings. And because, again, we're anxious to be ready to start the development of this next building as quickly as we can, hopefully by the fall of next year. We've asked for Park and Planning to review this at an administrative level rather than as a full DSP. And they're prepared and willing to do that, subject to the support of both the town of Riverdale Park and College Park. And so what we're really here to ask you for this evening is the town's support of Park and Planning reviewing this administratively. And with that, I'm through with the presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council about this proposed change? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I heard you mention that there's not going to be an increase in density, but I also thought I heard that you're adjusting the site for an additional office building. And I'm assuming I'm the one who missed something there. If you could clarify that for me.
No, it's a good question. I appreciate your asking. To clarify, what I was trying to communicate was that within the context of the current and the revised DSP, there would not be an increase in density. In the future, we intend to further amend the detailed site plan to add that additional building at the rear of the site, which would currently be a surface lot. But in the context of what we're currently revising, no, the density remains the same.
But you mentioned a parking structure. I'm guessing
Yes.
that parking structure would be built with the anticipated future changes to density in mind.
It would, yes.
How many spaces ballpark, if you know, would that be?
I think it'd be about 1,200, 1,300 spaces.
Okay. I've talked a lot about on this council and others have as well about the need to think about climate change in every little decision we make as a town, from like what kind of material we make sidewalks out of, et cetera. And I know University of Maryland shares that value and whatnot. So I'm curious to know what sort of infrastructure would be a part of this project, and maybe it's already there, in which case fantastic to act. Like, I get nervous when I hear about building more parking spaces. Clearly you're building several new buildings, you're going to need parking spaces, you're going to need a garage, and not trying to pour water on that. But I'm wondering how we're incentivizing people to not use those spaces, essentially. Be it, or maybe it's EV charging in those spaces, bike share kiosks. I know the Purple Line's coming in here. And I'm not asking for, a detailed plan here tonight, but just if you have any ideas you could share about that, about the sustainability aspects of the project.
No, I appreciate that. And what I'll say, first of all, is that COPT for a long time has been committed to sustainable design and development. And so all of our buildings are LEED certified. And as with this building, 4600 River Road is LEED Silver certified. That is what we're intending for this next building. We do plan, in conjunction with all of our projects, EV charging stations on the site. It's the kind of situation where we plan the infrastructure for those to be increased over time and expanded. It still kind of remains to be seen. We know the future of vehicular traffic is electric vehicles. We don't yet know what the broader infrastructure will be for charging those vehicles, whether gas stations will eventually convert, or whether developments will have to accommodate all the charging. We suspect it's going to be a blend of all of that. And so we always try to accommodate for the expandability of it. But for example, here with the parking structure that I mentioned, that 1,300 spaces would be a ratio of about 2.5 per thousand, which frankly is quite a bit lower than what the current market is here. It's about 4 per thousand still. And that's with the anticipation that there will be more public transportation used to access the site. The Purple Line, knock on wood, hopefully is ultimately coming here. We're half a mile from Metro. We're a mile or two from the university, and so there's still a shuttle bus run between this development and the university. And so there are a lot of ways to get here aside from by car. And so we're hoping over time that will be more the predominant way of transportation to and from the site.
Cool. Sounds like you guys have thought the sustainability aspect through pretty well. And I'd also encourage, like we said, other modes of sustainable transportation like bike share and whatnot. I know we're not
Absolutely.
at the level of deciding where to put bike share kiosks on the property yet. But thanks. I appreciate your answers.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Councilmember Foe, I believe you were ready to ask a question earlier.
I wasn't, but thank you for noticing me anyways, Mr. Mayor.
Are there other council questions? Councilmember Siddiq.
The city bike share, is that type of thing being planned into this?
We actually provided a bike share. Well, let me back up. Originally, when the detailed site plan that I showed you earlier was certified, it included a requirement that we locate a bike share on the site or at least fund a bike share that would be located on the site by College Park. And that was in conjunction with a program that they were contemplating entering into at that time. That apparently fell by the wayside. What we have done, and it does exist, is we located a bike share station just down a path from the site on a pop-up park that we built on University Research Court. And that's a Capital Bike Share station over there. Absolutely, with this development and with all these developments, will include additional bike parking stations. Whether they'll be bike share or not is something that we'd have to work with the jurisdictions on, because obviously those are things that tend to be more community-wide. But we'd be certainly receptive to that if there a program like that does emerge again for this area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll actually have a presentation after yours on micromobility from VioRide. So you could stick around and maybe you guys can exchange virtual business cards and talk to each other.
Absolutely.
Are there additional council questions or comments? Are there any public comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate this. We will take it up probably towards the end of the meeting under new business to discuss whether we might need to make I presume that, do we have to make a formal support, or is this just allowing MNC PBC to process it administratively?
They've actually asked for a letter from the town to Director Chuckley confirming the support.
Okay, then we will discuss it in our new business later this evening.
Thank you.
And take action probably next week. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you all
Mayor.
very much.
Okay, let's move on to our next presentation, micromobility in Riverdale Park. Alex Keating from VioRide.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Unfortunately, I received a message from Alex a few minutes ago saying he's faced a medical issue. He won't be able to join us tonight, but he does look forward to presenting at a future meeting.
Okay, well, that will shorten the meeting by a little bit. So let's move on to the third presentation, fiscal year 2023 budget presentation. Gentry Jones, Deputy Director of Department Services.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Jones is not with us this evening. Mr. Smith, if you can take care of this presentation for us.
Director Smith, you're on mute.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Jones put this presentation together, so I'm going to present his work tonight. We wanted to start out, there's no formal action requested, and staff seeks an opportunity to provide a high-level information update and to receive input from the Mayor and Council and the public on the FY 2023 projected fund balances. The staff leadership team and the budget committee continues their work in developing the 2023 proposed budget. Staff will present information in the same format we have throughout this budget development process. The town maintains the following funds: the general fund, the other post-employment benefits OPEB fund, the community development fund, the economic development fund, the health and wellness fund, the special revenue fund, debt service fund, and the capital improvement fund. As you see the PowerPoint presentation, the fiscal year 2023 budget development projections are for the current year. And this provides us an opportunity to make mid-year adjustments. And this gives us an opportunity, this will also assist us in determining next year's funding levels. The next slide will show our initial projections and our updated projections. Under the general fund, we initially projected $3,109,000, and we're updating that projection to $3,374,000. Just as a note, we have received, I think to date, 95% of our revenue. Our OPEB fund, we originally projected $281,950. We are updating that projection to be $319,563. We had projected that we were going to move some money to OPEB, and because of the revenue that we've received so far, we don't think it's a need to move those funds. Economic Development Fund, we've updated the initial projection from $44,582 to $2,545,875. Of course, that's the big change there is the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Fund money we received so far. So that made a huge difference there. Community development, we have 25,000. We're updating the projection to 15,000. Employee wellness, we have 26,000. We're updating the projection to 102,350. And once again, that's because we were going to do a transfer out of the health and wellness fund to the general fund, and because of the current situation with the revenue, we decided we do not need to make that transfer. We have the special revenue TIF admin fund, and that's $589,787, and we still believe we will meet that projection. Debt service revenue, we're looking at $61,257. And for CIP, we're looking at $141,487. And just a note on that one, we have a lot of programs or projects that we're working on this year that may not be completed in this year, but the funds have been encumbered, and we've set those funds aside to use for those projects. So we may end up with more money here, but that money has already been spent per se. Then we're looking at the general fund. Compared to years, we see the 3-year difference here. We had 3.9 million in 20, 4.2 in 2021, and 3.3 in 2022. In the OPEB, we're looking at 200,969 in 2020. In 2021, we were at 319,563. And in 2022, we're at the same number. Economic development, we had 144,582 in 2020. In 2021, we're at 44,582. And in 2022, we're projecting 2,545,785. Once again, that's because of ARPA funds. Community development, we have 2020, 57,850. 2021, 35,350. And in 2022, $15,033. And the last one is health and wellness, $82,350. We projected in 2021, it was $37,928. We're projecting that we'll end at $102,350 for this year. Special revenue TIF, in 2020, it was $263,949. In 2021, it was $375,580. We're projecting $589,787 in 2022. On debt service, 2020 was $45,123. 2021, it was $45,123. And we're projecting we will end at $61,257. In CIP, we are in 2020, it was $2,464,000. In 2021, it was $275,000. And in 2022, we're projecting 141,487. And that is our fund balance projections. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Director Smith. Are there any questions about the fund balances presentation from the council? Okay, I actually had one. Let me scroll through. The Community Development Fund is, actually, that wasn't the question I had. Well, I guess the question about the Economic Development Fund, that was my question. Excuse me. The 2.5 million and change at the end of this fiscal year, is that assuming any spending of the ARPA funds?
Yes, we're looking at from what we received, the 3,232,918 that we received, we're looking to spend 745,000 of that in this year. We actually reduced the amount that we said we were going to initially spend.
Okay, and then the rest of that will go into economic development into fiscal year 23.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Are there any additional questions from council? Nobody's unmuting. Are there any questions from members of the public? Also, no one unmuting. So thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. That brings us to the mayor's report on our agenda. I'm going to do only a short report. First item, just to remind the council, your town manager reviews are due next Monday at midnight. I believe you've all received paper and electronic versions of them in your email addresses and at your home addresses. One council member has already filled it out and returned it to me. I'm hoping to see more, but they are due next, by our agreed upon schedule, they're due next Monday at midnight. Leaning into the COVID pandemic, the numbers are dropping at a very nice rate from the Omicron wave. We were at a rate of 250 per 100,000 per day several weeks ago, and we are down today to about 31, almost a factor of 10, and the 31 is down by around a factor of 2 from a week ago. So with a little bit of luck, the number might drop below 15 within the next week to 10 days, and the town hall might be able to reopen for members of the public to come in on Wednesdays. On the one day we still have the town open if numbers are good. I want to encourage everyone to continue to stay safe, to not gather in poorly ventilated areas, to maintain distance when you're out in public, to get vaccinated and boosted if you have not. I actually heard someone suggest that it was known better part of a year ago that the vaccine was going to be a 3-dose, and so to become completely vaccinated, get your 3rd dose, and of course wear a mask when you are in places with other people. And just to build upon the last comment on the masks, I'm very pleased to report that since our last meeting, we have been quite successful in moving masks out into the community. I believe the town staff may have a better number than this. I believe we have exceeded distribution of 50,000 masks to residents of the town of Riverdale Park. Every resident should have received a box and instructions on how to use it effectively. Please use them. Please take advantage of this. It's important to keep the numbers going down. And if you are in a situation where you do not need the masks, Please share it with a neighbor who does. We are all in this together and we need to get out of it as quickly as possible. The last item I'm going to discuss is the tragic death of the mayor of our neighbor Hyattsville last week. It's a very sad time, I know, for the entire city of Hyattsville, for their staff, for their electeds, for their residents. And our hearts go out with you. We're thinking of you. You're in our thoughts and prayers. And I really regret that I did not get to know Kevin better during the time that I did. I was getting to know him. I had reached out. The pandemic is, of course, making it difficult to get together and really discuss things. And I'm sorry that he's gone. I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to know him better. I know that Councilmember Smith does know him better and may be speaking about that in council committee reports later this evening. That will close my mayor's report for this evening. The town manager sent me a note that he was having a family emergency. You're back?
I'm back for now, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. I may have to hop back off here in a little bit, but are you ready for my
Yes.
report then, sir?
Ready for
So a few items to share with the council and the community tonight. Mr. Mayor, since the beginning of the pandemic, so including previous mask distributions, the town has actually delivered approximately 94,100 masks to the community. The lion's share of that during this Omicron surge. And we initially had surgical masks in bulk, so that's what we handed out. But eventually, every residential unit in town received a box of 20 very good quality N95 masks. And so we do have another 24,000 masks ordered. I'm not sure when they're going to be delivered, but the next step is to also make masks available to our business community, especially our small businesses. And so if we get those in later this week, we'll start distribution right away. I was reminded in listening to Councilmember Smith's earlier comment about sustainability. Good to know that the masks that were handed out this past Friday were all in biodegradable bags. So we put the boxes in bags, but they were all biodegradable. So we're trying on the staff team to always have that at the forefront of our minds as well. So kudos to the DPW staff, and also joined by some others for in the middle of a weather event, because just on Friday, 24,000 masks went out. And so they're doing a wonderful job in getting things done. So staying with the mask theme, we have a public information campaign, Mask Up Riverdale Park. Some of you members of the council have already filmed your video. I believe that we still need videos sent over to Director Barnes. Mr. Mayor, if you could send yours. And then I think it's wards 1 and 3. Ms. Barnes, is that correct?
Wards 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, 1, 2, and 3.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. But if we can get those as soon as possible, so we can add that to our public information campaign, encouraging all of our residents and visitors and everyone to appropriately wear a good quality mask. Then a reminder to the mayor and council that on the 7th, in addition to the legislative session, there is a public hearing for the charter amendment. And so that'll be scheduled for next week. And then a number of weeks out, but town hall operations and DPW operations will be closed on February 21st in observance of President's Day. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there questions or comments for the town manager or for me for that matter? Hearing none or seeing none? No hands up, no unmuted microphones. We will move on to council committee and ward reports. Starting with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did find over the weekend my drop of mask in the biodegradable bag. So thanks to the town staff and everybody that helped in that effort in distributing those. I know it's a big lift, especially during a weather event. And I've mentioned to friends from other municipalities in the area that we as a town were doing this. And I say we as if like I was out in the snow distributing these things, but I'm really proud that as a town, this is something we're doing. There aren't many other places, none that I've heard of. I'm sure there's some out there, but none that I've heard of that are going through this effort to personally hand deliver masks to every single door in the town. And that's really impressive and makes me be proud of our staff and proud to be serving Riverdale Park and living in Riverdale Park. As the mayor mentioned, I'd like to take a moment to talk about a friend who led one of our neighboring municipalities and was a friend to many in our town. Normally, I prefer when I talk, if you've talked to me, you know this, to have just a few line of notes and speak off the cuff. But if everyone allow me the indulgence, I'm going to work from prepared remarks because this is going to be hard enough. I was heartbroken and devastated last week to learn the passing of my dear friend, Kevin Ward. He was, of course, the mayor of our neighboring city of Hyattsville, but he was a man of many other titles. He was a husband, a father, and a grandfather, an entrepreneur and an advocate, a helper, and a cancer survivor. And those of us that knew him well called him Scooter. I always made fun of him for being a grown man named Scooter. I called him my family and my best friend. To be precise, he was more than that to me. He was a big brother and a role model. Scooter knew so much about so many things that I don't, which may sound shocking to the many people over the years who have called me a know-it-all. But he always had advice. When I asked for it, he gave me the answers. He often gave me answers to important questions I wasn't asking, rather than just telling me what I wanted to hear. In fact, Scooter was the first person outside of my immediate family that I asked about running for this seat on the council. And I asked him if I thought I should. He said, "Why wouldn't you?" And I rattled off the con side of my list, the time commitments, long evening meetings that he often complained about from Hyattsville, and whether I was in a position to devote what it takes to the position. And his response was simply, "I think you'd be great at it." And once he said that, for all practical purpose, I was in, and I only hope I can serve to the standard he expected of me and that he himself set as a public servant. And if you knew Scooter well, you know the weight of that compliment. Scooter was maybe the most honest person I ever knew. If you asked him a question, he gave you the answer, whether it was pleasant or not. I knew he didn't tell me that, he wouldn't have told me that if he didn't believe it sincerely. And that was Scooter. On other occasions, when I had a pipe dream or crazy ideas, he wisely counseled me to slow down. But if I had doubts about whether I was meant for a moment, he picked me up and told me to get back to work. And that's what made our friendship unique, but maybe only for me, because Scooter was that way to everyone. He loved to joke about being antisocial and just wanting to be left alone, but then he was always helping people who asked for his help and people who didn't have the strength to ask. I think of him telling me he was overwhelmed with the work of Hyattsville's council when he served as their Ward 1 councilman, and that he wasn't going to run again. And then he became mayor, and then he ran for re-election. Scooter, he couldn't sit on the sidelines if there was help he could give. I think anywhere Scooter looked, he saw potential. And that's what made him a fierce advocate for foster care and adoption. It's what made him fall in love with his city and work exhaustively to make it better. And it's probably what made him take a younger friend under his wing and impart valuable life lessons while our kids played together upstairs. I've realized over this past week how grateful I am to have had a friend like Scooter. And grateful that we weren't the kind of men that avoid showing each other how we felt. In between jokingly calling each other other names that can't be repeated in a public forum, we'd frequently say or text each other, "We family." A couple months into COVID, he texted me that the next time we could be together, he wanted a hug, quote unquote, full frontal, 10 seconds. The last time we spent together was on my birthday in December, which coincidentally was the day the sports book at MGM officially opened, which was a great birthday present. And we sat together, just the two of us, in front of the 100-foot TV, watching football until closing time. We walked to the garage and hugged and said, "I love you." For all of the uncertainties I've felt since he passed, the one thing I'm certain of is that he knew I loved him, and that I know he loved me. Please, if you take nothing else from these remarks, take that. Tell people in your life how you feel about them. If you're struggling with mental health, tell them that too. It's okay if you're not okay. I will tell you in this moment, I am not okay, but I will be. And there's nothing weak about not being okay. And you can't get to okay while keeping it a secret. This forum is not sufficient to tell all the stories and feelings I'd love to share about Scooter. We'd be here to the next work session if I tried. So I'll close by saying this. I loved my brother Scooter, and I always will. We family isn't over, and I hope to be there however I can for Chad and Sydney and Norman and Eli and the rest of his family, just as I hope our town, Mr. Mayor and council members, will continue to be there for our neighbors at the city of Hyattsville as they grieve as well. City of Hyattsville will publicize memorial arrangements as they become available. I know they've been made. I don't know if they've been made public yet or not. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline provides 24/7 confidential support for people in distress and prevention and crisis resources for you or your loved ones. If you or someone you need is in need of help, call 1-800-273-8255 anytime, day or night. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please, nobody make me a YouTube celebrity. And that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'd like to add to your remarks about the suicide prevention line that in mid-July of this year, will become a 3-digit number, just simply 988. That's not in effect yet, but it's coming. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
Good evening, everyone. Councilmember Smith, thank you for so eloquently sharing the details of your friendship. I know that I also thank you for sharing that you're not okay right now. I have been there. I probably will return there. I am quite aware that we are right now a council and a staff that has experienced tremendous loss during this pandemic. And I just, to these individual people that are here right now, I just want to offer a listening ear, a phone call. You can come to my house and we can hang out in my backyard at any time. I am here for any single one of you at any given time. It's a week like this, and you read obituaries and commentary about the type of person that Mayor Ward was, and it makes me envious that he wasn't a close personal friend of mine. My thoughts immediately go to his husband, his children and grandchildren, his friends and family, and the people of Hyattsville. And it makes me continue to want to push for interactions with other towns. You know what I mean? Like other towns' elected staffs. I believe that we are all small communities close together, and I think we need to do a better job of getting to know each other and supporting initiatives and looking across these individual or invisible lines and making friends with these other people that are doing the same things that we are. My heart breaks for that community now. And my heart breaks for you, Councilmember Smith, over the loss of your friends or your friend. I don't have anything else to say. I just want to let everybody know that I am here for you. And that's the least I can do. So please don't ever hesitate. You can access my phone through town staff. Most of you already have it. But I am so ready and willing just to be what it is that any of you need. And again, thank you, Councilmember Smith, for sharing. It was truly remarkable. And with that, I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. I'll build on top of your statement. I'm also available, as I told Councilmember Smith over the weekend. And maybe I shouldn't share it with the whole town, but it's true that the ringer is always on this phone, and so please call. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Smith, I appreciate you sharing those things about Mr. Ward, which were true, which are honest, which are just, that are pure, that are lovely, things of them that were of excellence about him, and those things that were worthy of praise. And I hope you hold those things about him now and into the future. It's a way to remember him and some way to console yourself and friends. And now and into the days into the future. Losses like this are not easy. Losses like this can really cut right through. Losses during these past 18 months have been unfortunate for many. And we can keep those folks in our memory and keep those who are continuing on with their lives, with these losses now part of their lives, able to demonstrate some compassion. I think we'd all be a better place. Mr. I really don't have anything at this time for in terms of the ward report. I do want to thank staff, though, for the efforts you made to get the masks out. It is greatly appreciated. And I just want to make sure that was mentioned, because to get that many masks out is a Herculean effort to make. With that, I'll conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Siddiq.
The new parking signs went up in Madison Hill area, indicating no stopping or standing is also part of the requirement. And happy Chinese New Year to anyone who celebrates that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Siddiq. Councilmember Mejia.
Well, I have nothing to say. Just I'll take your offer for the mental health because it's really important. And in the situation of what else we have for the happen. So if I need you guys, I'll be calling you. Thank you. That's all I got.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Mejia. Councilmember Mayers, do you have a report?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My condolences to the family of the mayor. I don't have a board report at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. That finishes council committee and ward reports. Let's move on to public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? Doesn't look like it. So let's go on to work session discussion items. Item number 1, fence permit request, 6-foot wood fence at 4901 Sheridan Street.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. Staff received an application for a 6-foot wood fence at the Sheridan Street property. You'll notice the address is very similar because we just recently approved a curb cut for this property as well. Mr. Carl Granzo is here. He's the applicant and he'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the fence.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there questions about the proposed fence permit request?
Mr. Granzo,
Yes.
have you or the owner of the property had any opportunity to speak to neighbors to see if they had any concerns about this?
Yes, we have. Traditionally, we speak to every single neighbor prior to us putting in an application.
Yeah, I just wanted to do my due diligence and I haven't spoken to the homeowner or you guys yet. I see that town staff is recommended that we approve this. So I will ask that we put it on the consent agenda for next week. Is that appropriate?
You asking me that?
No. I'm asking the mayor that. But thank
Okay.
you.
That's fine if it's the wish of the rest of the council.
Yeah, I have no problems with this.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. Granzo about the plans. I was just trying to determine exactly where the transition from 6 feet to 4 feet went. I see that there are square markers, which I believe is 6-foot poles. Is that correct? And then there are round ones, which are the 4 foot. Is that correct?
I'm not sure to what you're referring to, but consistent with the county's regulation, the plane of the front of the house is prohibited from the front of the plane of the house to the road is prohibited from having a greater than 4-foot fence. So that's what we do. So yes, where your arrow is, whoever's doing that arrow, to the rear is the only area where there'll be a 6-foot fence.
Okay.
And there won't be one on the front of the property. We don't kind of traditionally like putting one on the front of the property.
So there's no fence at all up there?
No, both sides currently enjoy a fence on both sides. So quite frankly, all we're doing is replacing one.
Well, except the west side, there was no fence because it was a single lot, but I understand the point. So the other two boundaries were old 6-foot fence and you're replacing it with 6-foot fence, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There were part of it was chain link. There was actually The one boundary was a double, it's a chain link and a wooden fence. And we spoke to the neighbors, we took them both down. They were both, one was enjoyed the privilege of this property and the other one was their property. And we took them both down and we're gonna replace it with a single fence.
Okay, thank you for those clarifications. Just wanted to know what the plan said. Are there additional council questions or public questions? Okay, this will be on the consent agenda. Presumably, if Councilmember Foe finds out that there's a neighbor who has some concerns, then it might come off. But for the moment, we'll assume that everyone's happy with it.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
let's move on to discussion item number 2, fiscal year 2022 revenue update.
Good evening once again. I think no formal, there you go, thank you. No formal actions being taken tonight. We wanted to update on, do our revenue comparison. We have for, we're looking at local taxes for as of from July to January the 28th. We're at $6,133,642. Compared to other years, we are ahead of the game here. So we're doing, we've collected most of the real estate taxes here. Licenses and permits, $184,799. And compared to other years, we're in line. In year 2019, we had building permits that were a lot of building permits, which was part of Riverdale Park Station. So that year we saw more revenue coming from that, from licenses and permits. Administrative fees, $3,000. Fines and forfeitures, we're looking at $19,500. We've noticed this year that number has gone down. We have less vehicle impounds, which is always a good thing. And we have the community safety program, which is a safe speed for students. As we've been reporting, those numbers have gone up. We're hoping that they will go down soon because less people speeding. But right now we're at 777,707. And the total income so far this year has been $7,118,650. Then we look at the revenue comparison with 4 of our major categories: local taxes, licenses and permits, fines and forfeitures, and safe speed. If you look at the chart there, you see that, yes, you look at the chart, you see the local taxes is in dark blue. We're $6,133,000 there compared to other years. In fines and licenses and permits, $184,799 compared to other years. We are on par to reach our estimates. Total fines and forfeitures for this year, 776, 672, and once again, that's the safe speed for students. So. And that's it.
Thank you for that report. I believe I saw on one of the detailed financial reports that was presented during the special that we've actually reached 95% of our budgeted income for under the community safety programs. Is that
95% overall, the entire budget.
Overall, that's the entire budget. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there council questions on the revenue update? Are there public questions or comments on the revenue update? Thank you, Director Smith. Appreciate it. Let's move on to the next item, American Rescue Plan Act update.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm trying to pull up the right screen to share here. There we go. Okay. There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. It's been a very interesting month for the American Rescue Plan Act and our funds that we've been allocated. As a quick reminder, we've been allocated by the U.S. Treasury just under $6.5 million to respond to the economic downfall brought on by the COVID pandemic. Recently, as in this last January 6th, the U.S. Treasury released their final rule. Up until this point, we've been operating on the guidelines provided by the interim final rule. Those were provided in May of last year. The final rule reiterated that there are 4 general eligible use categories, those being supporting public health expenditures, addressing negative economic impacts, replacing lost public sector revenue, investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and providing premium pay for essential workers. This is all consistent with what was in the interim final rules, but and so therefore we are still able to move forward with our spending focus areas that we had discussed before. And there it is again, the exact amount we had received, the $6,465,000. One of the interesting updates to the final rule, though, that has had staff rethinking how the spending plan will look exactly is the update to the revenue loss item, the eligible expense for revenue loss. U.S. Treasury has advised that recipients of the funds may now elect to use a standard allowance, and the Treasury will assume that any recipient would have lost revenue up to $10 million, and therefore the recipients will be able to spend up to that standard allowance for $10 million on government services throughout the period of performance of the funds as they're distributed. And so before, into the interim final rules, revenue loss analysis required a calculation to see precisely how much revenue was lost compared to what was expected. But now, per the final rule, the U.S. Treasury has, and in the final rule, it explains exactly how they've calculated this $10 million. Well, they have calculated this $10 million, and participants are assumed that that any revenue loss, they are assumed a revenue loss up to that $10 million. And so the participants can choose to select this standard allowance rather than calculating, which they suggest all recipients who've received less than that $10 million move forward with the standard allowance in order to receive a maximum benefit from this change in the rules. So what does this mean for the town of Riverdale Park? So we hadn't planned on using the revenue loss eligible use category under the American Rescue Plan Act eligible use section, because year over year the town has actually had an increase in revenue, as Paul just showed in that last discussion item. We've actually increased revenue. We're a bit of an outlier in that sense, but regardless, the final rule allows participants or recipients of the funds to still use the standard allowance and use funds as revenue replacement up to that $10 million, or in our case, or we would be eligible for the entire amount. Some example of government services that would be eligible under the revenue loss eligibility category are, this is a list provided by the U.S. Treasury, but construction of schools and hospitals, road building and maintenance, health services, general government administration, including staff and administrative facilities, costs, environmental remediation, provision of police, fire, and other public safety services. And now, interestingly, the funds provided and used through revenue loss can now be used to meet non-federal cost share of other federal programs. And specifically, the example in my mind was CDBG. Often we receive CDBG funds, community development block grant funds, to help fund new sidewalks, or I believe one of our cases now is new lighting along 54th Avenue. These applications usually have a section asking for how much a match would be for the funds if they were to be provided. And in most cases on those CDBG funds, it says that other federal dollars cannot be used, but the U.S. Treasury has made it, has specified that these revenue loss funds can now be used to meet non-federal cost share of other programs like CDBG, allowing us to leverage more money and perhaps even make greater improvements than if we just use the funds directly. And so when reviewing our current documentation and our current funds and then how we've currently accepted the money for ARPA and the $6.5 million, we have an existing description of our Economic Recovery Strategy Fund. That description was based off of the interim final rule and therefore wasn't exactly correct anymore. And so we are proposing some slight changes to the description. The red line version of these changes can be seen in the cover memo in the Dropbox. So if anybody's interested in knowing exactly which words were changed around, there's another red line version there. As for the rest of this fiscal year, the town plans to spend $745,000 of the ARPA, or Economic Recovery Strategy Fund dollars. These funds are going to include the purchase of at-home test kits, and as we've talked about already, the personal protective equipment for residents that we've already delivered in part. Continuing to fund our farmers market dollar program, a residential rent relief program, as well as our small business assistance program that we reestablished in December. Moving forward, we will talk about our programs that we will begin in the next fiscal year during the budget process. Again, the standard allowance or the revenue loss eligibility from the town gives us a little bit more flexibility. For example, we would be able to acquire updated town assets that allow staff to conduct necessary services for town residents, and these assets normally purchased through general reserve funds would now be eligible under the ARPA spending guidelines. And so therefore we would have more money left available in the general fund revenue to establish our own programs, which would have more flexibility and it wouldn't necessarily be tied to the same federal requirements that the programs would be if they were set up directly using the ARPA funds. Our staff team has been working hard on the third-party applications for nonprofits who are interested in partnering, and other organizations who are interested in partnering with the town to help our residents. Our application are almost finalized and they should be available before the end of the next month. Again, the third-party applicants will need to request funds for uses that are eligible under the Treasury's recently released final rule. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Director Shelton. Are there questions from the council about this presentation, about the new rules? Are there questions from the public? Councilmember Lingua, you looked like you're about to ask a question, or just say you didn't have any?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask and touch base about when we're dealing with third parties who make requests of us for funding. By my understanding of this, essentially, while we still have a responsibility and authority about the money, the liability for on the town should a third party should funds not be used as intended for whatever reason or the like, that would we still be looking to make sure we still have the expectation on third-party requests which are granted, that a report be sent to the town in terms of the expenditure of that money?
Absolutely, yes. We would follow all the reporting processes, certainly in-house, that we would as if the funds were coming directly from the federal government, even if they are instead being funded through the general fund reserve through the revenue loss replacement. But yes, it's very important to us that they are spending the money appropriately, even though it may not be directly from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So yes, we will require that they submit reports regularly, and that is part of the application process. We're determining how regular that is right now.
And if I could add to that, we'll come back at the end of February and go over a little bit more detail with the mayor and council on the application process and everything, as well as the type of programs that you all want to see made available for the nonprofits in terms of categories that the nonprofits would be able to use the funds for. So we'd be looking for the council's approval of that. I would imagine, Director Chelton, the same as we have with our other grant programs, we would have a clawback provision in any grant agreement. So if someone did inappropriately spend funds, we would be able to claw the money back.
Yes, we would certainly include that in an agreement.
Great, thank you.
Any additional council questions? Any public questions or comments? Okay, this is a very big change, and the fact that we can use the ARPA funds towards more standard expenditures gives us a lot of options moving forward. So we'll have to be move very carefully, but also we only have a few years to spend this money out, and so we need to spend it relatively quickly. So I think it'll be easier under these rules to do that, but we have to move with decision.
And Mr. Mayor, is the council good with us having this the revised description of the Economic Strategy Fund on the agenda for approval next week?
I would think so. No one's objected. Okay. So let's go ahead and put it on the agenda, and we can discuss it more then. I will be honest that all that red text, I did not get a good chance to review it thoroughly this evening. So I'll try to get it done before next week.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let's move on to the next discussion item: mutual aid agreement with the University of Maryland Police Department.
Acting Chief Woodson.
Hi, good evening, everybody. No action is going to be required at tonight's meeting. We'll talk about it again on February 7th and ask for authorization for the town manager to sign the agreement with the University of Maryland Police Department. Little background: the town currently has mutual aid agreement in place with all of our surrounding jurisdictions, to include Hyattsville City, Mount Rainier, Bladensburg, Greenbelt, University Park, Edmonston, Brentwood, and Laurel. The mutual aid agreement, it allows for concurrent jurisdiction when agencies request assistance from the Riverdale Park Police Department. Typically, this would occur during emergencies or if they need help during a community event. At this time, RPPD and UMD do not have mutual aid agreement in place. And as the university continues to purchase properties outside of UMPD jurisdiction, but within the town of within the town of Riverdale Park, RPPD and UMPD have several areas where the two agencies need concurrent jurisdiction. This agreement would assign concurrent jurisdiction to both agencies within the specified areas surrounding property owned by the university. And this agreement has also been reviewed by our attorney, the town's attorney, Mr. Fred Sussman, as well as the legal representatives for the University of Maryland.
Thank you, Acting Chief Quixons. Any council questions or comments on this item? Any public questions or comments on this item? Councilmember Lingua, you're unmuted. Do you wish to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just pausing for a second to make sure I got it formulated right. Acting Chief Quixon, I take it this is of equal benefit for both departments?
Oh, yes, sir, definitely, especially as close as we are. We've helped them out in the past, like during large football games. We've helped them out with parking when they've had overflow parking at College Park Academy and stuff like that. But this would just formalize everything. But no, this definitely would benefit both of us. Both agencies and jurisdictions.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sure.
Any additional council questions or public comments or questions? I have a question, and I don't know if you know the answer or not. Do you know how many officers the University of Maryland Police Department has?
I believe they're in the 50s, maybe a little bit more now, but I know they're super short. I think they're authorized for in the 70s, but they're way short.
Okay, but nevertheless, if we needed a response due to something, then having, at least in principle, 50 to 60 extra officers could be of quite a bit of assistance. So
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If there are no additional comments and no one is unmuted, then we can move on to item 5, the town's common seal.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I tried to capture some thoughts overall, I guess, in the memo, and as well as provide a way forward if the council was interested in a redesign of the common seal. So if there's questions on what's in the memo, or what the staff recommendation is, if the council's interested in doing this, then I'd be able to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there council questions or comments on this item?
Are we looking to get community input on this?
I believe we're looking to get community input on everything that we do. The timescale for this activity is, of course, very long. We're going to have many opportunities for community input should we decide to move forward on it. And the reason that this is appearing now is that if we're going to do that, there are going to be budgetary implications in fiscal 23 should a new seal be adopted. And staff needs to start working those impacts into the budget if there's a possibility of it happening.
Okay. Is this a task that staff is going to take on, or is this going to be taken on by the council?
If I could speak to that briefly, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation, Councilmember Lingua, is that there be a committee. This is not from a staff perspective. Staff aren't looking to drive this or to weigh in. The recommendation is if the council wants to do this, to form a committee. And what we envision that it would be a committee perhaps made up of members of the council and members of the community.
Okay. And I'm just trying to see how this is going to be I mean, if this is going to be a long, a process over a long term, I'm trying to understand how this is going to have a monetary impact on the FY23 budget.
Well, it would depend on how long of a process, sir. So if the council were to form a committee and move forward, I need to know whether or not in the next 17 months, if there's going to be artwork that's required, is there a final redesign of the seal? And if so, I have to plan on uniform patches, police officer badges, signage, marketing materials, all those sorts of things.
Right. Well, that almost seems that, I mean, 17 months, that seems almost short term to me for something like this. I would expect, a process, for this to be done and then finalized and then put into effect would probably come in more as an issue for FY24 than for FY23.
And that's the type of clarity that the staff team needs, sir. In terms of if the council moves forward, what type of time frame are they looking at? Is this something where I need to figure out how we would fund it in the budget that we're working on?
Yeah, I just I see, I see this as a longer, possibly a longer term thing. That is, should feedback from the community come back that, that they are looking to change the town seal. I mean, we don't even know that at this point.
Additional council questions or comments on this item?
I'm sorry, Councilman Smith, I didn't raise my hand. You can go.
No, go for it, man. Go for it.
I'm just intrigued by this process. Looking at the patch, it's hard not to see that there's what used to be a plantation on it. In light of what we have seen across the United States over the past, I don't want to limit this, but over the past 3 or 4 years, I shudder to think where we would be as a town if we had an instance involving our police force while they were wearing a patch that had a plantation on it. That's just the way that I'm looking at this right now. So I would be interested in hearing town input, and I would be interested in participating in any committee that looked at potential options for updating this patch. So that's where I stand right now. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Smith.
I just echo Councilmember Foe's comments and note that what really strikes me about this seal, and context removed, I think it's a great seal that would work for our town and or similar design for any town. But the place, the mansion there, that where people that still reside within our community within Riverdale and Edmonston in the area, Riverdale Park. That there with the statement, the past is prologue above it. And I'm wondering, if our seal, it's as the town manager mentioned, it's on the police badges, it's on marketing materials, it's on uniforms. If that's the first thing that people see, if that's the first impression that we make as a town, and it's the past is prologue over a slave plantation, I don't know that that's the sort of message that we want to send, or a message that is accurate, an accurate portrayal of the inclusivity of our town. And as I've mentioned in permanent discussions, the Riversdale Mansion and the grounds are a part of the history of this town. And I don't think I or Councilman Foe or anyone is advocating to remove its place as a cornerstone of this town and its history. But as I said, it's a part of our history. It's a part of our history. There are many other parts to our histories and the mansion itself is only a part of the mansion story, as we know with Councilman Foe's remarks he's brought to us and about the Plummer family and his efforts to rename the park over there. So I think it's a great time to look in and see how we can redesign this to reflect the inclusive nature of our town and reflect all of our town's history.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Any additional council questions or comments? Any public comments? So I enjoyed reading the memo on this written by Town Manager Estician, and he and I discussed this briefly over the weekend. And I realized after our discussion that there's some question about the trees that are in the top part of the seal. And I realized that they might actually be the representing the elms that used to line the streets of Riverdale Park or Riverdale many years ago. And if true, if those are in fact representing the elms, I'd have to have somebody tell me whether that looks like an elm or not, because I don't know what Dutch elms looked like before Dutch elm disease came and took them out. But if that's true, then that's yet another thing on the seal that doesn't really exist anymore, because the two bridges used to go over the Anacostia, where the Riverdale Road Bridge that is now slated for a replacement because it's falling down has been constructed. That's where those two used to go. Before the Corps of Engineers got a hold of it, there were two branches of the Anacostia, and there was a bridge over each of them. And the bottom building, I believe, is the Riverdale Baptist Church, which was built on the location near where the Calvert Family Cemetery is, near the historic core of town, and it also doesn't exist anymore. And so just wanted to add those few details about the seal. Is there a consensus on the council on how we should move forward on this? On whether we should set aside some small amount? Should we have the town manager generate a couple of scenarios for the cost and the schedule of doing this, and discuss those at a future meeting? Councilmember Smith, so your hand is up.
I think that'd be appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager, do you see any issues with that?
No, sir. Just so I'm clear, different scenarios and different timelines and that sort of thing, and we'd bring that back to you.
Right. So one scenario could presume that there would be. I I can't imagine the process and the adoption of a new seal taking less than probably most of the rest of this calendar year. I could see perhaps very late in the calendar year, something being adopted. So assuming that that modestly aggressive schedule happened and we wanted to do the changes to the various physical manifestations of the seal starting, say, next January, a year from now, then what the cost of that would be in the fiscal year. So if that was one, and also if perhaps it was more modest, that we were just going modest, slower schedule, we were going to perhaps engage an artist to help us draft a new seal or multiple possible new seals, then what that cost might look like in next year's budget.
We'll put some scenarios together, sir.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify the historical record, town manager didn't know this story. The current digital version of this seal was put together by a young volunteer approximately 20 or 25 years ago named Alan Thompson. And so I can tell you that I know more of the details of this seal than I think anyone necessarily wants to, including the cross-hatching treads on the fire truck, the location of the bolts on the engine, and the draped Maryland flag was one of the most difficult pieces of it. But anyway, just wanted to think back to this was one of my first volunteer activities with the town of Riverdale. So I wanted to bring that up. Okay, if there's no more discussion, Councilmember
Mr. Mayor?
Farrell. Yes.
No, I was just, as part of the scenarios, I have a lot of things in my picture now, multiple hands. I don't even know how that happened. I would be interested in seeing how other municipalities have addressed any things like this, because it is important, I think, to engage the town and gathering community. I would just be interested if there are any other examples of municipalities that have changed a logo and how they've gone about it, just to see what that process entailed. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we could probably look to other municipalities and get some advice on how we could move forward with this.
That is a fantastic idea. I know that some nearby communities have done this, so we don't even have to go too far afield to find out what the process was. Thank you. Okay.
You have a hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Is the councilman looking to take on that initiative himself, or is he looking to have staff take care of that?
I was asking staff, Councilman, but I know being short-staffed, if it's something that I have to do, I will be willing to do that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, my suggestion is that being that staff already has a substantial amount on its plate already in terms of the number of projects we have going on, ongoing projects, future projects, the fact that we need to get distributed over the next 2 to 4 years to have distributed and fully spent the $6.5 million we are receiving in ARPA funds, that it might be a good idea that this type of legwork is something that is done by council and or volunteers so interested in this endeavor.
Okay, well, it sounded like Councilmember Foe was willing to send a few emails or texts. So happy to do that. Councilmember Smith, I see that your hand is up.
Yeah, I would just like to volunteer whatever time I can offer as well to help Councilmember Foe in that effort, and in terms of the constitution of whatever communities or search process we have. I think we have a great town manager who can manage the staff's time and their plate and workload and whatnot, and happy to work with Councilman Foe if it needs to be an all volunteer and council member effort. but I think we can leave the day-to-day management of the staff to the town manager.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Okay, no more hands. So I'm going to move on to the next item, item 6. The Longfellow Street storm drain. Okay, I'm just going to start over again. Longfellow Street Storm Drainage Improvement Project, CIP 20 PP01.
Director Lewis.
Sure. Good afternoon or good evening, excuse me, Mayor and council members, members of the community and staff. I'm actually very delighted to report that the Longfellow Stormwater Project has reached 2 major milestones this month. The county's Department of Permitting, Inspection and Enforcement, or DPI, has approved the design plan. That's a major step. This allows the project to move forward to construction, and staff is currently soliciting bids from contractors to actually build the stormwater improvements. For tonight's discussion, no action is required from the mayor and council. Instead, I'm providing a brief on the process and timeline for selecting a contractor to build improvements on Longfellow Street and on 2 adjacent residential properties. Staff hopes to be back before the mayor and council next Monday, February 7th, to recommend a contractor for council consideration and to request authorization for the town manager to sign an agreement with that contractor. Back in December 2020, the town requested an amendment to the municipal participation agreement with the county to increase the project budget by $200,000 from $100,000 and to extend the project timeline to April 16th, 2022 from April 16th, 2021. That extension is obviously fast approaching. In consideration of that date and anticipating that the permit would be approved this month, staff released an invitation to bid for construction services on January 12th. Bids are due this Wednesday, February 2nd at noon, with the virtual public bid opening scheduled for later that day. The council is requiring that the Prince George's Council is requiring that we have a minimum of 3 bids for this project. So our fingers are crossed that we'll achieve more than that, but at a minimum, at least that. The project engineer, county Department of Environment staff, and town staff will review proposals and select a contract for recommendation to the council, the town council that is. The staff will also have an agreement for construction services with the chosen contractor for mayor and council review, and will request authorization for the town manager to sign that agreement at the legislative meeting on the 7th. Construction costs are estimated at $113,000, and with engineering costs at $56,630. The total project budget is $187,000. There is some wiggle room in the project budget should bids exceed this amount. However, an amount that pushes the budget over $200,000 will require a second amendment to the municipal participation agreement with the county. We might also need an amendment if the proposed construction schedule of the preferred contractor would extend beyond the end of March. County DOE staff will support the extension if necessary, they've expressed. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Are there questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
So with everything that's going on, Director Lewis, this project still looks to be able to be completed by mid-April.
Well, we are hoping. We put within the contract, initially we had 45 days from beginning till end for the project to be constructed. However, some of the potential bidders asked if that could be extended. At the end of the day, we asked them to propose a schedule that they believe they can achieve. And so if the contractor we select has asked for a timeline beyond March, or that would take us beyond March, we'd actually need an extension from the county in order to approve that. And if you recall from the first extension request, it took several months for us to get a response. Obviously, that would be a problem in this instance. So that is an issue that we can't resolve until we see what the proposals are from bidders. but we're hoping that the project can be completed. If we get a contract executed by February 11th, I think, is what's in the invitation to bid, and the notice to proceed includes a date, that date, or the next day, then the contractor, it may be possible for the contractor to build the project before April 16th. But the world as it is, it can't be guaranteed.
Right.
Guaranteed.
But we can certainly guarantee, I think, maybe I'm going on a limb, we can certainly expect, I should say, that the project will start in February, provided we get a bid that we can accept, and should be well underway by the end of March, if not completed.
Right. Okay, well, the 28th of February is 4 weeks away.
Yes.
And
We've come a long way, council member. This is, I can't you taste it. We are
no,
here.
no, I know we've come a long way. We've come.
No, I appreciate
we've
the
come a
questions
very
you
long
asked.
way.
Yes,
No,
yeah.
I agree. We've come a very long way.
Mhm.
In the time that you've come back in and you have been approaching this, and I cannot thank you enough for grabbing this by the figurative proverbial horns and wrestling this and getting it to this point. I do appreciate that a great deal. At the same, and this has been, and prior to you being here, this has been a project almost akin to the town hall renovation that has been years in the discovery and discussion of what's feasible and what's possible in terms of on this project dealing, working with county on this. To finally determine after decades who exactly was responsible for what and what can get done. I'm just hoping that we don't come all this way, and we don't come here with and get all this work done, and then find that we're getting tripped up in the final weeks of this project. That essentially brings on another delay or is incurring the town another expense. Just because county is feeling that it wants to stick to its conditions that it put on here about completion time frame, which what we're dealing with now, and with the weather being that we are in winter and we're seeing a lot of volatility in terms of temperature swings, that we're seeing that we're not going to be able to meet that mid-April deadline, and county may not be so willing to, and we don't know if county is going to be willing to extend that, and then we have to wait on county to hear from them, whether or not they're going to extend it. And from what you're saying, it could be months before we hear from them. So now we're out till June, July at this point, as to whether, we're going to be able to get the extension. And I'm just concerned. I
certainly appreciate that.
Real concerns.
Mhm. If I may, I appreciate the comments you made about my efforts in this matter. But if I had my way, and I don't mean to be flippant, we would have started 6 months ago.
Oh, I'm with you.
But because we all had to endure the county's process, here we are. I think the good
Right.
news is And what I'm almost assured of is that this project will be started before April 16th.
Okay.
And so we're not going to be able to stop midstream and wait for the county's committee to approve the extension. We're going to have to complete the project with the town's money on the table,
Right.
or continue with the project while this committee is considering our second request, and just have to deal with the outcome. If the project is completed before we hit back, we have an invoice, we'll have to pay it. I am confident in believing that the county staff and the Department of the Environment that are closest to this project certainly is supportive of getting this project done.
Okay.
And through the development process, I have to tell you, others have been who are involved, who are staff in DPI, have started to understand how critical this issue is. I think what we went to them for clarification on the county's county-based small business requirement, and they actually waived that requirement, understanding that we may not get a small business to bid on this project, and no one wants
Okay.
the residents to have this thing delayed even further because of the impact on them for so long. So I think awareness and sensitivity has grown among other county staff, and so I think there would be support to get the extension if we needed it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, Director Lewis, you have reached out to, this extension is known to the county at this time, possible need for an extension.
It's known to the staff in the Department of the Environment that are assigned to this project and leading the effort from the county's point of view. I would hope that they've talked to their director, but they said before we did that if we need an extension, we need to request it.
Okay, but we will know that probably next Monday.
We will know that possibly by next Monday. We may have a contractor that says we can do it by the end of March, and then because of weather and supply chains and all of that, might need more time. Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Any additional council questions or comment on this item? Any public comments? Okay, thank you very much, Director Lewis. I appreciate your detailed and straightforward proposal about what's up and what the realities on the ground, and I guess in this case under the ground, are. And so let's move forward as fast as we can.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is, oops, I was about to skip over one. Riverdale Park Station infrastructure and acceptance process and timeline.
I have this item as well. This item doesn't require mayor and council action this evening. Instead, I'm going to provide a quick review of the process and timeline for the town to request and accept the transfer of roads and associated infrastructure in Riverdale Park Station from the developer Calvert Track LLC to the town. A decision was made during the development review process back in 2020, if not earlier, for the Riverdale Park Station project that streets in the development would be dedicated to public use and under the ownership of Riverdale Park. At a point, the developer offered, and Mayor, you might remember this, and the town indicated its intent to accept the public streets in the development. The planning board's resolution in 2012 approving the preliminary plan of subdivision for the project noted that dedication of the public rights of way will occur at the time of final plat, but the public streets will not be accepted by the town until they are satisfied as set forth in the condition established by the planning board in that resolution. The resolution also says that after completion of construction and final inspection of on-site roads, and upon request of the town, such roads shall be dedicated and turned over to the town in such manner and subject to such reasonable terms and conditions as the town may require. In 2019, the county conducted 2 on-site road inspections, and all issues were addressed by the developer to the county's and town satisfaction. Since that time, however, the pilot house at Riverdale Apartments has been completed, along with the associated infrastructure. This was at a minimum a 2-year-long project, during which time construction vehicles were in and out of the development and potential damage to the existing infrastructure might have occurred. So the process to request and accept the roads and associated infrastructure must begin with an inventory and assessment of this infrastructure, which includes the present condition of roads, curbs, gutters, and curb ramps, sidewalks, traffic signs, street lights, and supporting control boxes and street trees. The map that you received in your packet, and if I can share my screen. Okay, it's on the screen. Yes, thank you, so that I can. So this map shows the ownership responsibilities across entities associated and located within the development. The gray areas, though, identifies those locations and infrastructure that the town will take on or that have been dedicated for public use. In addition to roads, it's sidewalks within the residential areas of the development, street trees within that location. I understand with the developer, and we have yet to finalize that discussion, that street lights throughout the development would convey to the town. Within the commercial areas, however, we understood that the town's responsibility would be back of curb to back of curb, and of course, street lights wouldn't fall within that area. But in a conversation we had with the developer last year, there is an expectation that the town takes on all street lights within the development. This first step also includes a meeting with, before I go there, so you'll see through the other color codes that responsibility is spread among several entities, including Maryland National Capital Park and Planning over the trolley trail, to the Business Association, this blue, the HOA in terms of the alleys and areas represented in pink and orange, and of course the gray infrastructure that would convey to the town. So the first step in the process, in addition to, let me back up, the first step in the process is for the town to inventory the infrastructure it expects to take on, the streets, the street trees, the street lights, to determine their condition, and then to sit down with the developer and share our findings and seek resolution of any concerns that we have about existing conditions. Staff anticipates that this is also an opportunity to request that certain traffic calming measures that were identified in the study that was done by one of our on-call engineers to be implemented before the transfer. Other steps in the process will include developing, this is pretty much the action that the council will take. The staff will develop the transfer and acceptance ordinance, and the council will introduce and adopt the ordinance. As a part of this process, staff anticipates that the entire process starting this February will take 6 months to complete, taking us to June. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Director Lewis. I see that Councilmember Smith has his hand up. He can go first.
Thank you. Good to see this project moving along. And thank you, Ms. Lewis, for your work on this. I know it's very important. It's very important to me as the Ward 1 council member. I know it's very important to the the residents of Riverdale Park Station. Sorry, Riverdale Park Station, you're not all on the council except for an honorary status. One question that just struck my mind on the issue of the street lights. Did I hear correctly that we were not expecting to take possession of those, but we are taking possession of those?
I think that's a discussion that we have to finalize with the developer. I guess we understood generally that within the commercial area, we would only take on the road from curb to curb. Within the residential areas, from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk, which of course would include any street lights within that area, as well as street trees.
Okay. Do you know, and this may be the dumbest of questions because I don't know anything about streetlight infrastructure. But do you know if we were to take possession of those, are they a kind of whatever streetlight that
Fixture?
yeah, there we go, fixture. That's the word I was looking for. Basically, I'm concerned is if the maintenance of those would be a problem, or if they're essentially interoperable with the skills and tools that we have on staff already. Like, I don't know if like one's halogen and one's something else or whatever.
Their streetlights, their decorative streetlights are similar to the town's decorative streetlights, and their light fixtures are LED. You know, we're transitioning to a lower, you know, temperature. Yeah. So that's a good question. Our inventory of streetlights will give us more information in terms of what we would be taking on. Again, I expect we will take on those that are within the right of way that's transferring, that we understand to be transferring to the town. So we'll have an opportunity to answer that question, to make that assessment of whether or not we have to hire someone to maintain those lights as we develop in-house capacity to manage them. For the most part, we do the maintenance or replacement on the town-owned lights as they need to be replaced. You know, some of the poles get knocked down. We have the experience and technical expertise to reinstall them. So we would have to make that determination at that time.
Awesome. Thank you for looking into that. And I don't know if this is, I don't think this would be a question for you. This would be up to us in the enacting ordinance, I would assume, but, and correct me if I'm wrong. But I hope, and this may already be something we're planning on, but there will be public notice to the residents there when this is happening, and like basically this map that's up here on the screen so that people know, you know, I know, like, for instance, we all know being close to DC, when you're in around DC, you can be on 4 different corners of an intersection and be in 6 different jurisdictions. So we see that here in some places too, where it's MNMPC, it's Town of Riverdale, it's HOA, whatnot, just to make sure that the residents are aware of who belongs to what, so they know who to call when they have a problem, and don't, you know, expect the town to do things in the alleyways that are the HOA's responsibility, or expect the HOA to do things that we should be doing and providing services for our residents. And then lastly, I just asked that as part of the process, and I'll certainly work within this council on this, to make sure that the HOA at Riverdale Park Station is satisfied with the condition of everything in the agreement before we actually take possession of everything there. And then just ask that as the council member for this ward, if I could be kept in the loop, and as we, any movements as we get, not any and all movements, I don't want to micromanage you, but just if I can make sure I'm able to answer questions from constituents when they ask about it as we get closer to that date, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, sir.
Any additional council questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? So I have a couple of questions. The first, if you can zoom in on the northern end of the trolley trail north of Woodbury. That is marked as HOA with no indication of trail right of way. And
That is a good point.
And I'm just curious about what the situation is there. I wouldn't want the HOA to be blocking that the trail there if they get mad at us or something. So, you know, it's, if you could check.
I would need to look into that, because as much as I've looked at this map, that didn't get my attention. But it
Okay.
certainly looks that's under the responsibility of the HOA, and I can't believe that's what was intended.
Right, it looks funny, and so that's just what
Yeah.
I wanted to check into that. The other question is that one of the slowdowns in this whole street acceptance project is figuring out how to accept the streets and then not have them destroyed by future construction. And I know that there's been a lot of possible solutions to that. Can you and or Town Manager Listician briefly discuss what's up with that, what the current plan is?
I'll
we've-
defer to the manager on
yeah,
that.
we-
That's
we-
his
we-
element on this.
I was going to say we divided up task, and so I've met with Mr. Sussman, the town's attorney, and we've agreed that probably the simplest way to do this is through an ordinance that would require that certain construction projects present a road maintenance bond for a period of time. And so I'll be working with Mr. Sussman to do that. One area that we've looked at in the code is an existing chapter, chapter 15, which is for building permits, and to just embed language in an existing chapter that defines larger scale projects that are prone to or most likely to have large construction equipment. And there'd be an inspection process ahead of time to inspect the current condition of the roads. And then they would present a bond, and then there'd be an inspection following. And we'd be able to then make claims against that bond.
Okay. Just need to make sure that that ordinance passes before we accept the streets. That's an important
Yes.
thing. So let's keep that in mind. Those are my only questions. Anything else from council or public? Okay. Thank you for the update, and it's very exciting. I'm always asked by people in Riverdale Park Station about what the schedule is, what the process is, and they are as worried about us not ending up with the streets messed up by future construction as we are. So that's good.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 8, town redistricting.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just briefly summarize the packet material. This is something that has been discussed previously, and or during a previous discussion, there seemed to be consensus among the council that there'd be a committee appointed, and that committee would be chaired by the mayor. And further discussions with Mayor Thompson, the staff recommendation is that there be 4 members of the committee, including the chair. And if this is what the council would like to do, we would recommend that there be a resolution adopted next week that establishes the committee. And then at that time, staff would conduct outreach to the community for individuals who are interested in serving on such a committee. And then we would bring those names back to the mayor for appointment and confirmation by the council.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Members of the council, does that sound like an acceptable plan? Any objections? Councilmember Foe gives it a thumbs up. Councilmember Smith gives it a thumbs up. Councilmember Sadiq gives it a thumbs up. I think I saw Councilmember Lingua's thumb up briefly. Was that correct? Okay, sounds like we have a plan. So please draft that resolution.
We will, sir.
Okay. Any comments from members of the public? Okay. Let's move on to item number 9, renaming of the Field of Dreams.
Mr. Mayor, I'll keep my comments very brief to introduce the topic. As indicated in the packet material, if the mayor and council desire to do this, we would recommend that happen also by resolution next week. Councilmember Foe has brought this up, and there seemed to be a willingness of the council to be open to this discussion. And that's why it's back on the work session this evening. And in writing this memo, I actually had a couple drafts. I started writing some things about Adam Plummer, and there's just no way to encapsule in a brief packet memo the life of this man. But as it notes here, it's staff's perspective that such an action would align with a resolution that the council passed in 2020 in support of Black people and efforts to reverse systemic racism and to acknowledge contributions folks have made in our town.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there council comments on this proposal? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I know what area we're talking about here, and have believed I was certain until I saw this agenda item and thought, well, maybe I should make sure I am correct on that. So could we just describe quickly where the actual location of this park is?
Yes, sir. So if you are at Lafayette and Tuckerman, and you would look to, if you're right at that intersection, you would look to your northeast, and it's an open area that is bounded by Lafayette, Tuckerman, and River Tech Court.
Awesome. Exactly where I thought it was. So I don't look as silly at this moment. Yeah, I support this effort wholeheartedly. I think it's great. Thank you.
Councilmember Foe.
Yeah, I just wanted to update council as to what I've been doing in the last couple of weeks since I started talking about this. I think that I mentioned that I had met with Mai Davis and Sam Ferris at Riversdale, gained their support, and I hope to have them present at this meeting. I reached out to Doug McElraith, who is a constituent, but also a local historian who works for the University of Maryland. He loves the idea. He's currently running a project at University of Maryland called the 1856 Project that details the Underground Railroad's activities along the Route 1 corridor prior to emancipation. Trying to think what else. I've talked to family members. It's a little bit difficult to get a hold of Reverend Fowler. He's not a technological wizard, but I have been, Riversdale put me in contact with, I believe her name's Violet Sharp, and the family seems really enthused about this. And quite frankly, February 7th, being in Black History Month, I think it is a remarkable honor that we can bestow upon all residents of this town and upon that family to choose to honor this family. Adam Francis Plummer, who was enslaved at Riversdale, and make this park something that we all can be incredibly proud of. I will reserve the majority of my comments till next week, but I am just elated to have the opportunity to do this. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Any additional council comments? Any additional public comments? Councilmember Lingua, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So are we looking at a resolution next week designating a name change? And if so, is it settled on what that name change is going to be?
I believe that, I mean, if such a resolution were brought forward next week, then of course it can be amended on the spot, should that, by the council, should that be the decision.
So so in other words, we're not even sure what the new name of the park would be.
The currently proposed name is Plummer Family Park. While I haven't spoken to Councilmember Foe about this, I was sort of thinking over the weekend that we might want to actually name it after the actual first plumbers who emerged into freedom from enslavement, and name it the Adam and Emily Plummer Park. Just throwing that out as an idea, but that's, you know, I think naming it after the Plummer family is the general idea, and we can have a proposed. I mean, it's been discussed as the Plummer Family Park, but we can make that decision next week if we want to change something else. And certainly, someone will have to introduce the resolution with a name on it.
Okay, so we're still at the stage of a general idea of renaming it to have something to do with the Plummer family.
Yes, and what's been discussed so far is Plummer Family Park. I believe that has been proposed for at least a couple of months, and so you know, I think if that's the way we want to go, we can go.
And has there been any other town input on this?
Councilmember Foe has his hand up. Please feel free to.
That was a suggestion that Samantha Ferris made in my meeting with Riversdale. I had always thought of honoring the family because if you read the packet that Riversdale offers, it just talks of the whole struggle that existed for the entire family. But Councilman Langwa, I am open to any and all suggestions. And that is definitely not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. A point I have, or not, a question that I have would be, could we motion to name the park after the family on February 8th and then have further discussions upon a potential name, or should we have a specific name February 7th? Sorry, not the 8th.
You know, I mean, I can see the idea where it's coming from, and it's a neat idea. It's just, I think it's just, it just seems it's still only part of the way there. And, you know, I'm glad that, you know, we're getting in touch with the Plummer family. But I think it would be great to have a conversation with the Plummer family and get their input on this. Also, being that it's a, you know, it's a park that belongs to the townspeople of Riverdale Park, it would be good to have input from folks from the town too.
My goal was to have constituents show up to the meeting on February 7th, including the residents of the family, to participate in a dialogue. I will try to facilitate a discussion with Reverend Fowler. He was supposed to call me earlier this week and he hasn't yet, but yeah, I can do that as well.
I see this as being just more than one discussion. That's just my thought on it. You know, it seems to me that this is something that's going to probably need more than just one discussion.
I don't see why it would take more than one dialogue to talk about how we would choose to, like, I mean, about the naming of the park.
Councilmember Smith, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just confused by the this being more than one conversation. We've talked about this in this council at several meetings over multiple months, and have had chances to ask questions, indicate our support or reservations or whatnot. This isn't like a new idea. This isn't the first conversation we're having about it. Next week won't be the first conversation we have about it. It has the support of the Riversdale mansion, the folks that work on that history project, local prominent historian, as Councilmember Foe mentioned, who can attest to the historical accuracy of naming this area and that or naming this park in this area after the family. all of our meetings are open to the public and we invite public to comment. I think the mayor invites any public questions, even when there are no public members on the call, which I think is a good thing. So this is something that's been in consideration for a while. And I thank Councilmember Foe for bringing it to our attention and allowing us to help work on this. But it's certainly not new or a thing that's being considered hastily. There's a lot of research about this. There's been a lot put into this effort already. So I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't take action during Black History Month this year to name the park after the folks that were forcibly enslaved and worked and bled and sweat and tears into the soil to put their name on that soil. We should be able to do that, and I don't see. I guess I'm not sure what any objection to that idea would be.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I think the councilman hit it on top, hit the nail on the head with the reservation that I was expressing when he said, we've discussed it. Yes, to an extent, somewhat, albeit my feeling is peripherally. We, the council, have discussed it. And by the looks of how these meetings are attended, it's pretty much ourselves and staff and a few other people. But I mean, in the times that I've been out and I've talked with folks or anything, I haven't heard anyone approach me about knowing about or hearing about this idea of renaming Field of Dreams.
So
I've heard from the council. I've heard from Councilman of the Second Ward, you know, his interest in renaming it. I've heard, you know, from Samantha Ferris about the meeting and that she had a great conversation with the council member regarding the naming of the Field of Dreams to some version of Plummer Park, and that they are keen to be involved and to offer resources to help in determining how to name, you know, what name would be fitting. And my thought is to try and have everyone ready to be able to settle and finalize on a name a week from tonight. Is kind of short notice, even with the fact that, you know, we've still really yet to get into contact with the Plummer family.
Councilmember Foe, but if I may take just a brief moment, that I've honestly been quite surprised with the number of people who reach out to me and say that they catch our meetings, not necessarily live, but on either Facebook Live or on YouTube. So there are other members of the town that are listening in, perhaps not live, but are there. Councilmember Foe?
I think your lack of hearing about this, Councilman Lingua, doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. I haven't had one person speak to me about renovations on Longfellow Avenue, but I know it's for the best of the community. We have a public forum that we dialogue with. I have social media that I have posted this on. People's inability to utilize this venue to comment on that is not the concern of this council. I'm just a little frustrated with your dragging your feet frequently on this. We have an opportunity to honor a family that was enslaved in this community, and you're nitpicking again about something that I see is pivotal to this community significantly, because we're living in this society now. I am a history teacher by profession, and I teach in Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia, and we just had a governor that passed legislation, Executive Order number 1, about the focus of teaching critical race theory in our classrooms. And the target of that is going to be the way that we teach the relationships that we've developed with African Americans in this country, starting from 1619 on. I think we have a remarkable opportunity in front of us to get that right, to get it right. So Levon can grow up in a town that honors both the founding family of Maryland and the slaves that assisted them in the process of gaining that wealth here. I just think that I feel inspired in this time period, and I don't necessarily know that any citizen or constituent participation in this is going to change how resolute that I feel in my ability to dialogue with this council and in this community. This is a great opportunity, and I would really love to have you on board. So if you have a name to suggest, I would love to hear it. But the focus on process to me is just an attempt at delaying something beautiful, and I'm not really into that right now. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
To start, I don't think at any point I said I was against this. To follow up, yes, I'm very aware of what's happening in Virginia, as my sister is a teacher of AP history down in the city of Virginia Beach schools. So I'm very aware of what's going on down there. In regards to process, for the better part of 30 some years, I've been involved in a business where process is very important. And that to make sure that those parts of the process are such as to essentially produce an optimum result. And if it is about getting something right, it is about doing something, I feel that including the Plummer family in on the discussion, hopefully they can, if they can be here by next week, that would be great. But if they're unable to, I think that the process should include their input in an earnest conversation with them and get input from them as to how that field could be named. And I think that's probably something that the folks at Riversdale would be happy to help you with. And that is my suggestion. I'm not dragging my feet. I'm just trying to hope that this goes in a way that all parties are comfortable with. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there additional council or public comments on this? Okay. I am going to, I feel like there's, we haven't heard from several council members. By the way, Councilmember Mayers was feeling ill and dropped off the call or dropped off the meeting a while ago. But I feel like there's enough interest in this that I'm going to keep it on the agenda and for the moment, and we can see what happens. We'll vote on the agenda next Monday and see if there's been some lack of interest at that time. And with that, Unless there are other comments, move on to the next agenda item. Okay, let's go to agenda item 10, Charter Amendment Resolution 2022 CR01 regarding elections.
Director Barnes, can you walk
Certainly.
us
Good.
through this, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. If I may, I'd like to talk about legislative or discussion items 10 and 11 because they're companion legislation that would create the Riverdale Park Board of Elections. The first piece, first step in the process is a charter amendment. The public hearing for the charter amendment is scheduled for February the 7th, so next Monday. I expect that the chief and deputy chief election judge will speak during that time about this charter amendment resolution. The second piece of the process is an ordinance, and that simply makes some changes to the town election procedures to make room for the Riverdale Park Board of Elections. So this is a structural change to the way that the town would conduct elections. And as we've discussed for many months now, there are some changes that need to be made. And this group would spearhead the discussions, the public discussions about those changes and make recommendations to the mayor and council. So this is part of an overall larger process. I'm happy to answer any questions that the mayor or council may have for the public as well.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there council questions? Are there any questions from the public? I have some questions. So I actually dug into this this legislation more than I've dug into many pieces of legislation recently. And if we can go to the rewritten section 502, just the start of the third page. I believe that there's a cover memo for items 10 and 11, and then there's an item 10 and item 11 separately. So, yeah. So, as I said, go down to the top of page 3. It's item H, I believe. Yeah. So, this comes from way too many experiences working with boards, keeping them staffed, and so on. So item H discusses what happens if the mayor and council remove a member of the board. But I didn't see, and I may have missed it. I admit that I dug in, but not that hard. Didn't see anything for if a member resigns, what the process is for replacing them. And so if you could just verify with the town attorney that that's covered, because we see that very often, that a member of a board will resign. And I would say based on item H that we would probably appoint someone to serve out the remainder of their term, because we want to keep these members of the board synchronized. But nevertheless, I just want to make sure that that's in there. That's the only item in the charter amendment. But if we can now hop over to the ordinance. So 29, section 29-3 C. I think it's at the top of page 2. Yes, exactly. So it says there, a judge shall judge. So this is talking about election judges, and there's this funny overlap, but the chief election judge and the deputy chief judge are all judges. So it says a judge shall serve for a term of 2 years unless sooner removed by the mayor and council for cause, blah, 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 until his successor is appointed. And so there's the Board of Elections, and then there are 3 judges that are appointed just before the election. And again, in terms of synchronization there, then we would have the 3 judges of election that were appointed before the election overlapping 2 boards, and that's fine. But I just wanted to be sure in item C in particular that we had consistency between the charter amendment and the ordinance in the terms. And so again, this is just a question for the town attorney to review and consider that we have consistency there, because it feels like there might be some, and I just want to make sure we have it. And then my third, and I think it's my last comment, is on item G. And the item G is talking about, making rulings about generally various things that are going on at an election. And it says here, all rulings shall be by the Board of Elections. And I'm generally okay with that, but I can imagine that during particularly a high turnout election, when you're more likely to have something requiring a ruling by the judge, that that you might not want to have to stop all the voting and have the board meet as a group and discuss each item. And so I would suggest considering to say all rulings shall be by the chief judge, with the possibility but such rulings can be appealed to the entire Board of Elections. And I don't know if that's really going to change anything, but I think that basically saying, the judge is going to, make a ruling on the spot and inform anyone wishing something different that the ruling can of course be appealed. And then the person who is making the request would have to say, no, I really do want to have it heard by the entire board. That might make it a little bit easier. So that's just a possible change, which I thought I would suggest. And that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson, for your thorough review of the legislation.
It's fun every now and then to be a legislator, so that's what I do. Okay, any comments from any additional comments based on those from members of the council? Any comments from members of the public? And there is at least one member of the public here. At least logged into Zoom. She's been very quiet. Okay, then we will have hopefully the town attorney will be able to look at those items before next week, and we can have discussion as part of the public hearing and in next week's meeting. So that took care of items 10 and 11. Item 12 is minutes. As always, please read the minutes and do your best to find a mistake in there, because the town staff is very good at getting them correct. And please let staff know if you do find a mistake. And that brings us to new business. Are there any items of new business? There was the one item of the letter of support for the change in the DSP for the lots 15 and 17 of the Discovery District. Is there any objection to putting that on the agenda for next week from members of the council?
Do we know how College Park, how the meeting went with them and what their thoughts are on this redesign is?
I do not, but we could ask staff to reach out to College Park and find out, or I could send a letter to Mayor Boyan if you would like me to do that.
I think it would be a good idea and just hear, hear their thoughts on it. I mean, I know that the gentleman will like us to act quickly on this, but I think if this is something that I just find it interesting, they go and they speak with them, they go and come and speak with us. They do 2 separate meetings as opposed to 1. I think being that it's a shared property, or shared development really, that discussing it with them, perhaps they may be thinking that they'd like to see some modifications to what they're proposing that we may find to be a good idea, being
Sure.
that they do have a planning department and a development department.
Sure. And in fact, we could put conditions in our letter of support if we wanted to. We could.
Yeah, and that's why I think really we need to it's a pretty substantial reworking that they want to do. And one of the things that I didn't hear being brought up from the gentleman was how they're looking to address stormwater management through there.
Okay, well, I can tell you
I
from.
mean, that's just one thing. That's just one thing I just noticed about his presentation.
Sure, and the stormwater management, we can ask, but stormwater management, I believe, will be covered by the county's pretty strict rules about stormwater management because construction is starting after those rules came into effect.
Okay.
But we can ask. That's a question, and that's a question that we can ask that College Park may already know.
Yeah, I mean that's just one, but I mean in terms of just what they're looking for, I would just like to compare. I think it would be good if we compared notes with College Park before we go off and sending a letter.
I was thinking that during the presentation, and I appreciate you reminding me of it. It dropped out of my mind. So
Okay.
yeah, can staff reach out to staff at College Park and find out if they take?
Yes. Yes, sir. We will do that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to add that to the agenda again. I don't think that there's anything on fire for this. I think they want to move forward as quickly as they can, but I think if we needed to delay it until the special at the end of February or March, that it would not be terrible. So I'm going to put it on the agenda for next week, but let's see what comes back from College Park before we actually adopt anything.
Great.
Any other items of new business? Any items of unfinished business? Okay, it's a lot earlier than I thought it was going to be given the number of items on the agenda. I'm going to go have some dinner. I hope everyone has a fantastic evening.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you all very much.